Hello, this is Gaur. Today's topic is monopoly market structures. So far, we have studied about perfect competition. Another form of market is imperfect competition. Monopoly market structure is one of them. In this chapter, we are going to discuss monopoly market structure in detail, that is, its price output determination, its supply curve, multi-plant firm, monopoly power, deadweight loss, price discrimination, bundling and two-part tariff. Let us begin with the definition of monopoly. The word monopoly means alone to sell. Thus, monopoly is a market structure or it is a situation of a single seller producing for many buyers. Its products are extremely differentiated and thus there are no competing sellers producing near substitute products. Let us discuss the features of monopoly market. First is, firm is single seller of the product. Second, there are restrictions to entry. Third is, no close substitutes. Fourth, individual sellers are price makers. Fifth is, there is no competition. Sixth, firm and industry are one and the same. And seventh is profit maximizer. Certain examples of monopoly market structure are postal services, railways, etc. But what are the sources of monopoly? These are: first is patents and copyrights, second, control over the essential inputs, third, control over natural resources, fourth is technological superiority, fifth, legal barrier, etc. Moving ahead to monopoly's revenue curve. Monopoly's revenue curve is downward sloping, that is, sloping from left to right, meaning that it has to reduce the price to increase the sale of its product, as we can see in this diagram. Our next topic is price output determination under monopoly or firm's equilibrium under monopoly. First is short-run equilibrium. A monopolist has to determine not only the output but also price of the product. Since he faces a downward facing demand curve, if he raises the price of his product, his sales will go down. On the other hand, if he wants to improve his sales volume, he will have to take lesser price and will always try to maximize the profit. That is, he will try to attain the equilibrium level of output. As in perfect competition, a monopolist's main aim is also to earn profit, but it may either earn profit or may incur loss in short run. Here in this diagram, we can see that as long as marginal revenue exceeds marginal cost, a monopolist will go on producing additional units of output. This is because of the reason that here each additional unit of output will lead to increase in revenue and not cost in the same proportion, until firm reaches its maximum profit, that is at the level of output where MR is equals to MC. Thus, firm will produce OM level of output and will earn maximum profit. Therefore, firm will be in equilibrium when it is producing and selling OM quantity of output. Beyond this level, firm will incur loss or as cost will then increase more in proportion to revenue. As we can see here in this diagram that from AR curve, equilibrium output OM can be sold at price OP. Further, it is observed that at OM equilibrium point of output, average cost of production is equals to MT. Here profit per unit is TS. Thus, TS multiplied by OM, which is area HTSP, gives the total economic profit made by a monopolist. Three basic points we should know about a monopolist are: first is profit maximization rule, that is MR is equals to MC. Second is revenue maximization rule. Firm should produce where MR is equals to 0 because as MR is equals to delta TR divided by delta Q, thus if MR is greater than 0, TR increases. If MR is less than 0, TR decreases. Third is price elasticity of demand, PED, for a monopolist. If MR is greater than 1, PED is also greater than 1, then demand is elastic. While if AMR is less than 1 and PED is also less than 1, demand is inelastic. Another is long run equilibrium. Long run is a period long enough to allow the monopolist to adjust its plant size or use his existing plant at any level that maximizes his profit. In the absence of competition, monopolist can also produce at suboptimal scale. In other words, he need not reach the minimum of LAC curve, he can stop at any place where his profits are maximum. Optimum level or optimum capacity here means that output level where short run average cost is minimum. The most important and necessary condition for a monopolist to remain in business is that in any case he should not make losses in long run. The size of the plant and extent of utilization of existing plant of a monopolist will always depend upon the extent of the market demand. Graphically, we can see the optimal utilization of plant by producing at the least cost point of the short run average cost curve. In this figure, MR is marginal revenue curve, AR is average revenue curve, SMC and SAC are short run marginal cost curve and short run average cost curve respectively. LMC and LAC are long run marginal cost curve and long run average cost curve respectively. The point where MR meets SMC, LMC is the point of equilibrium E. There are three different conditions of a firm in long run. First is monopolist is operating at suboptimal size and is underutilizing its plant's capacity. Here the LAC is minimum at L, but optimal use of the existing plant is at K and actual utilization is at A. Point of equilibrium E is on the left of the least cost point on SAC, thus underutilizing the existing land. Second is monopolist is operating at its optimal size and utilizing its plant at its full capacity. Here the point of equilibrium is at minimum point of SAC curve, which corresponds to the minimum point of LAC curve. Thus, point where all SMC, SAC, LMC and LAC curves meets is the point of equilibrium. Third is monopolist is operating above its optimum size and is overutilizing its plant's capacity. Here SAC is tangent to LAC on the right of the minimum point of the LAC curve and the equilibrium level of output E is to the right point of the minimum point of SAC curve. Now a question arises that is there any supply curve in monopolist market? The answer is no, because by the definition itself, supply is a unique relationship between price and output, that is, against a given price there is a particular output to sell in the market. But here this concept of supply curve is irrelevant as a monopolist is a price maker, means full control of the firm. So, it chooses its profit maximizing combination among the possible market demand curves. Here in monopoly demand curve slopes downwards and marginal curve lies below it. Also, as per the condition of equilibrium, that is MR is equals to MC, thus even with shift in demand curve, there will not be any price output relationship in the market. Hence, there is no supply curve in the monopoly. Let us move on to next topic, which is multi-plant monopoly firm. Multi-plant monopoly refers to the situation in which a monopolist has two or more plants for the production of a single good. The basic law behind multi-plant monopoly is that the firm should keep on transferring output of the higher cost plant into the lower cost plant until the marginal cost of all the plants are equalized. Meaning that if MCA is greater than MCB, then output is reduced in plant A and increased in plant B. While if MCA is less than MCB, the output will be transferred from plant B to plant A, and this process will continue until MCA is equals to MCB. The combined marginal cost curve of plant A and B can be found by horizontal summation of MCA and MCB. Thus, to calculate profit, the condition for equilibrium is MCA plus B is equals to MR, which is equals to OQA plus B. Thus, at equilibrium, the firm produces OQA plus B level of output and sells at OP price. This implies equalization of marginal cost of both the plants, which is achieved when plant A and B produce OQA and OQB respectively. Let us move on to next topic, that is price discrimination. Price discrimination occurs when a producer sells a specific commodity or service to different buyers at two or more different prices for reasons not associated with difference in cost. There are different types of price discrimination. First is personal discrimination, then local discrimination, third is discriminating according to use of trade, fourth is product discrimination, fifth age discrimination, sixth is gender discrimination, seventh size discrimination, eighth is brand or quality variation discrimination. For example, first is doctor charges different fee from different patients based on their income categories. Second is prices of fruits and vegetables differ from posh localities and other localities. Third, we can take lawyer charges different fees from different clients based on the case and so on. Moving on to conditions for price discrimination. There are basically three main conditions required for price discrimination to take place. First is monopoly power or price setting power. Second is separation of the market into different groups of consumers. Third is elasticity of demand differs from each group of consumers. Let us discuss types of price discrimination. There are different types of price discrimination in monopoly based on degrees. First is first degree price discrimination, means charging the maximum price consumers are willing to pay. Second degree price discrimination means charging different prices depending on quantity consumed. Third degree price discrimination, charging different prices depending on particular market segment, for example, age profile, income group, time of use, etc. Fourth degree price discrimination, when prices to consumers are same but the producer faces different cost, these are also called as reverse price discrimination. Now let us discuss determination of equilibrium in price discrimination. Suppose there are two markets to which a price discriminating monopoly has to sell his product, that is market A, market B. Both markets have different price elasticities, that is demand is more elastic in market B than in market A. This figure shows DA and DB as the average revenue curves for the respective markets. MRA and MRB are the corresponding marginal revenue curves. Since all his output is under one organization, there is only one marginal cost curve, which is lateral summation of the two curves MRA and MRB. Necessary conditions for equilibrium are: first is MC is equals to AMR, as like other monopolists, main motive of the producer is also to earn profit. Second is MC is equals to MRA, which is equals to MRB, as here in discriminating monopoly, producer has not only to decide how much to produce, but also has to distribute the output in two different sub-markets in such a way and at such a price that he maximizes his profits. And the profit in each market is maximized by equating MC to the corresponding MR. In this figure, we can see that MC and AMR intersect at point E and OM is therefore total output of the monopolist. The line EM is the line of equal marginal revenue. It indicates that OM1 will be sold in market A at price P1M1 and OM2 is sold in market B at price P2M2. Under this arrangement, the marginal cost of the total output is equals to the marginal revenue in each separate market. Thus, we can see that discriminating monopolist charges a higher price from the market which has relatively inelastic demand. The market which is highly responsive is charged less. On the whole, the monopolist benefits from both the markets. Now, next topic to discuss is bundling. Bundling is the practice of selling two or more products together as a package. Industries engaged in this practice includes telecommunication, financial services, healthcare and information, food industry, etc. For example, in food industry, different food items are combined to form a complete meal, or loan and insurance are sold together, etc. Bundling is possible only in two situations. Consumer have heterogeneous demand, or the firm cannot practice price discrimination. When the shops are located in different areas, they may serve different groups based on age, sex, education level, occupation, etc. of consumers, which have different relative preferences for these two varieties. This customer heterogeneity is used by the firm for its benefit. Moving ahead to another topic, that is deadweight loss. By definition, it is loss of economic efficiency in terms of utility for consumers or producers such that the optimal or allocative efficiency is not achieved because of high monopoly price. The necessary condition for a total societal welfare to be maximized are: first is perfectly competitive markets, second, no externalities in the market, third is no government interventions. Before we proceed, let us understand certain concepts. First is consumer surplus, meaning surplus of price which consumers are willing to pay rather than go without it. Second is producer surplus, meaning the difference between the amount that a producer for a good receives and the minimum amount that he would be willing to accept for the good. Now, let us understand deadweight loss of the monopoly by illustrating consumer and producer surplus on a graph. This diagram considers the case where the firm is in a perfectly competitive market with an infinite number of identical firms or has a monopoly on the market. In case of perfect competition, the firm will simply produce at the competitive price PC, where the supply and demand curves interact. All firms are identical, so will face identical supply curves. If this firm's supply curve, that is marginal cost curve, was higher and it was unable to profitably produce at PC, then it would have gone out of the business. And if its supply curve was lower, it was able to make profits, then other firms would enter the market until all the firms were making zero profits. Thus, the firm produces at price PC and supply quantity QC. While if it has a monopoly, it will produce at the point where MR is equals to MC, that is where the marginal revenue curve cuts the supply curve. This is quantity QM, which will sell for price PM. Now, first consider the consumer and producer surplus in the case of perfect competition. In perfect competition case, consumer surplus is equals to A plus B plus C. Producer surplus is equals to D plus E. Now, consider the consumer and producer surplus in the case of monopoly. In case of monopoly, consumer surplus is A, producer surplus is B plus D, and thus deadweight loss is equals to C plus E. The effect of going from perfect competition to monopoly is bad for consumers. Consumer surplus has been reduced by B plus C. Area B has gone from consumers to producers. So, this is not an overall welfare loss. It is just a distributional change from consumers to producers. However, the monopoly is good for producers. Producer surplus has increased by B minus E, and as B is a larger area than E, this is a net gain. Areas C and E are deadweight loss. Consumers have lost C and producers have lost E. This is because now the quantity is decreased from QC to QM. So, overall society losses out. There is a net welfare loss. When the aggregate welfare of consumers and producers is taken into account. From an economic point of view, here there is an efficiency loss caused by going from perfect competition to monopoly. Consumer surplus is A, producer surplus is B plus D, and deadweight loss is C plus E. Thus, the effect of going from perfect competition to monopoly is bad for consumers. Now, let us discuss monopoly power. It is the discretion power of a producer or a seller for setting up of price and output policy. It determines the actual degree of control of a producer or a seller of the market. There are different methods of determining the monopoly power. Let us discuss one by one. First is elasticity of demand as degree of monopoly. The extent to which a monopolist exercises control over the price and output determination depends upon the elasticity of demand. Measure of monopoly power is thus given by inverse of elasticity of demand, where degree of monopoly power is equals to 1 divided by EP, where EP is absolute value of the price elasticity. But as elasticity of demand is different for different points of the demand curve, thus elasticity of demand fails to measure monopoly power and leads to misleading the results in some cases. Second is Lerner's measure of monopoly power. As per Professor A.P. Lerner, pure and perfect competition is the state of social optimum or maximum welfare, and any departure from it would indicate presence of monopoly power, leading to improper allocation of resources or a state of less than social optimum. Based on this, index of monopoly power is equals to P minus MC whole divided by P. Thus, greater the value of index P minus MC divided by P, greater will be the degree of monopoly power. There are certain causes of monopoly power. These are: first, barriers to entry; second, number of competitors; third is advertising; fourth, degree of product differentiation; fifth, the larger and more expensive the barriers to entry, the greater the monopoly power. Sixth is the smaller the number of competitors in the market, the greater the monopoly power. Seventh, the greater the advertising expenditure and more irrecognizable the brand name, the greater the monopoly power. Eighth is the larger the degree of product differentiation, the greater the extent of the monopoly power. Now, move on to the last topic, which is two-part tariff. A two-part tariff is a pricing scheme according to which the buyer pays to the seller a fixed fee and a constant charge for each unit purchased. When it is used, the average price paid decreases as more and more units are purchased. Further, it is the marginal charge and not the fixed fee that determines the how many units will be purchased. Therefore, a two-part tariff can be used as a vehicle for price discrimination and also for manipulating the incentives given to the buyers, allowing also the sellers to capture part of the residual surplus through an appropriately chosen fixed fee. There are two key implications when a two-part tariff is used. The first is that the average price paid decreases as more units are purchased. Therefore, larger buyers pay less per unit than smaller buyers. Second is, for the buyer who trades according to a two-part tariff, the fixed fee represents a fixed cost. Hence, the fixed fee does not determine how many units the buyer will purchase, but only whether the buyer will enter into this trading transaction or not. The volume purchased will depend only on the marginal price. These two features of a two-part tariff represents the main reasons why such a pricing arrangement can be used. First, since the average price differs among buyers according to their usage, a two-part tariff can be used as a vehicle for price discrimination, in particular when these buyers will have to self-select. Second is, since a two-part tariff essentially allows the simultaneous use of two independent instruments, it could imply a more efficient trading transaction than linear pricing. The fixed fee may be used to transfer money from buyer to the seller in a lump sum and hence less distorting way, while the marginal price may be set independently to determine the optimal quantity traded. Let us summarize it at the end. As a monopoly is a firm which is sole selling in its market, it has a downward sloping demand curve for its product. Its marginal revenue curve is always below the price of its goods. A monopolist maximizes its profit by producing the quantity at which marginal cost is equals to marginal revenue. Hence, as its price exceeds its marginal revenue, so it also exceeds marginal cost. He may cause deadweight loss. A monopolist can also raise their profits by selling at different prices based on willingness to pay, or we can say it can discriminate the price to increase economic welfare and can hence reduce deadweight loss. In this chapter, we have learned the basic concepts of monopoly. We have also discussed its equilibrium, that is profit maximization of a firm, and various other related topics. Thank you.